Welcome, friends, to Tales by RM, where we believe in old stories and new voices. If you are seeking a tale that touches the soul and reminds us that even the longest night must yield to the dawn, you have found your place by our fire. Do not forget to subscribe and join our community of listeners. Now let us journey to the village of Bal. The sun had not yet breached the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of violet and deep indigo, when Zawadi's day began. In the village of Bal, the roosters were still asleep, their heads tucked beneath their wings, and the great ancient baobab trees stood like silent sentinels in the gloom. But for Zawadi there was no rest. At 12 years old, her hands were as rough as the bark of those trees, and her eyes held a weariness that belonged to an old woman who had seen too many harsh winters. She lay on a thin reed mat in the corner of the kitchen hut, the smell of cold ash and stale maize filling her nose. A sharp kick to her ribs jarred her awake before her mind could even register the morning. "Up, you lazy girl," a voice hissed. It was Binta. Binta, her stepmother, loomed over her like a storm cloud. She was a woman of striking beauty, with skin like polished obsidian and wraps of vibrant silk that rustled when she moved, but her heart was a withered thing incapable of warmth. Since Zawadi's father had passed, taken by a fever 3 harvests ago, Binta had shed her mask of kindness. The house that once rang with Zawadi's mother's laughter had become a prison of silence and labor. "The market opens at sunrise," Binta commanded, her voice devoid of pity. "There are 6 sacks of cassava by the door. They must be at the stall before the first buyer arrives. And do not drag them, you will ruin the skins." Zawadi scrambled to her feet, her body aching from the previous day's toil. She nodded, for she had learned that words only brought blows. She moved to the door where the sacks waited. They were monstrous things, swollen with the heavy tubers, tied tight with rough sisal rope. Each sack was nearly half her size. To carry one was a struggle for a grown man. To carry them all, trip after trip, was a punishment designed to break her spirit. She hoisted the first sack onto her back. The weight was immediate and crushing. Her knees buckled, trembling violently as she fought to straighten her spine. The rough fibers of the sack bit through her thin dress, grazing the skin of her shoulders, reopening scabs that had never truly healed. She bit her lip until she tasted copper, forcing a whimper back down her throat. Stepping out into the cool morning air, Zawadi began the long trek to the market. The village was waking up now. The golden hour was approaching, that magical time when the river glittered like a silver serpent and the haze caught the sunbeams. It was a scene of breathtaking beauty. Mothers sweeping their courtyards, children laughing as they chased the light, but Zawadi saw none of it. Her world was narrowed down to the patch of red dust immediately in front of her bare feet. Step, breathe, don't fall. Step, breathe. As she passed the other huts, she saw the elders sitting on their stools. She saw neighbors who had once shared meals with her parents. They looked at her, a small fragile thing bent double under a burden fit for a mule, and then they looked away. They focused on their weaving or their chickens, or the sudden fascination of a cloud in the sky. It is a strange and terrible thing, how silence can be louder than a scream. The villagers knew. They saw the bruises on her arms, the hollows of her cheeks, the way her childhood was being ground into dust by Binta's cruelty. Binta was wealthy now, having seized Zawadi's father's lands, and she had a sharp tongue that could ruin reputations. So the village of Bal, in all its harmony and tradition, chose the comfort of "not our business." Zawadi dropped the first sack at the empty market stall, her lungs burning as she gasped for air. 1 down, 5 to go. By the time she was on her 4th trip, the sun was high and unforgiving. Sweat stung her eyes. Her legs felt like water. As she hefted the sack, her foot caught on a protruding root. She stumbled. The world tilted and she fell hard, the massive sack pinning her to the hard earth. Dust filled her mouth. She lay there for a moment, the weight pressing the air from her chest, and for a split second she thought, if I just stay here, if I just don't get up, maybe the pain will finally stop. Tears, hot and angry, leaked from her eyes, mixing with the dirt on her face. She was alone. Truly, utterly alone in a village full of people. But then a shadow fell over her. It was not the jagged, angry shadow of Binta. It was a stillness, a pause in the wind. Zawadi squeezed her eyes shut, expecting a scolding from a passerby for blocking the path. "The earth is a heavy bed, child," a voice said. It sounded like dry leaves skittering over stone, ancient, cracked, yet humming with a strange vibration. "But it is not time for you to sleep in it yet." Zawadi opened her eyes. Standing before her was not a villager she recognized. It was an old woman, leaning on a gnarled staff that looked as if it had been pulled from the heart of the forest itself. Her clothes were rags, yet they shimmered with colors Zawadi couldn't name, and her eyes were milky white, seeing nothing yet seeing everything. The old woman did not wait for an answer. She hooked her staff into the crook of her arm and bent down. To Zawadi's astonishment, the stranger's withered hands, looking as fragile as dried parchment, gripped the heavy sisal rope of the cassava sack. With a groan that sounded more like the shifting of earth than human effort, she heaved. The sack, which had pinned Zawadi like a trapped animal, lifted. It didn't just move. It seemed to float for a moment, lighter than air, before the woman set it gently upright. Zawadi scrambled backward, crab-walking in the dust until her back hit the rough trunk of a nearby acacia. She stared, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice rasping from thirst. The woman smiled, and the action transformed her face. The map of wrinkles around her eyes deepened, not with age, but with a profound, terrifying kindness. "I am just a traveler, little one. A traveler who knows that burdens are meant to be shared, not borne by children alone." She reached into the folds of her rags and pulled out a small gourd, uncorking it. "Drink." Zawadi hesitated. In the house of Binta, nothing was given freely. Every scrap of food, every drop of water came with a price. A chore, a slap, a reminder of her worthlessness. But the thirst was a fire in her throat. She took the gourd with trembling hands and drank. The water was cool, sweet, and tasted faintly of honey and mint. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. "Thank you," Zawadi breathed, wiping her mouth with the back of her dirty hand. "You have her eyes," the old woman said softly, her milky gaze seeming to pierce right through the grime on Zawadi's face to the soul beneath. "Your mother. You have her spirit, too, though it is currently buried under all this dust." Zawadi froze. "You knew my mother?" "I know the wind," the woman said enigmatically, leaning on her staff. "And the wind carries stories. It tells me that the daughter of the late, great gentlewoman Nia is being treated like a mule in the very lands her lineage tended." She looked toward the market, where the villagers were now bustling, haggling, and laughing, studiously ignoring the scene by the roadside. "And it tells me that silence is a heavy blanket that suffocates the truth." Tears pricked Zawadi's eyes again, but these were different. They weren't born of pain, but of recognition. For 3 years, no one had spoken her mother's name with anything other than dismissal. Binta had erased Nia from the house, burning her clothes and selling her jewelry. To hear her name spoken with reverence felt like a warm hand on a cold shoulder. "I have to go," Zawadi said, panic suddenly spiking as she remembered the remaining sacks back at the hut. "Binta, my stepmother. If I am late." "Go," the woman nodded, stepping aside. "But take this." She reached into her sash and pulled out a small grimy object dangling from a leather cord. It looked like a simple stone, dull and gray, encrusted with years of dirt. "Keep it close to your skin. Do not let her see it." Zawadi took it, confused. "What is it?" "A seed," the woman winked, though her eyes remained blind. "Or a key. It depends on who is holding it. Now run, child. But know this, the sun does not apologize for rising, and you should not apologize for existing." Zawadi tucked the cold stone down the front of her dress, feeling it settle against her heart. She hoisted the sack again. It was still heavy, crushingly so, but something had changed. The water, or perhaps the words, had put steel in her spine. She walked the rest of the way to the market not as a slave, but as a girl with a secret. If you are listening and feeling the weight of your own burdens, remember that here at Tales by RM, we honor the old stories and new voices that remind us we are never truly alone. Sometimes, help comes in the strangest of forms. When Zawadi returned to the hut for the next load, Binta was waiting. She stood in the doorway, blocking the sun, her eyes narrowing as she scanned Zawadi's face. She sniffed the air, smelling the faint, sweet scent of mint and honey that clung to the girl. "You've been dawdling," Binta snapped, stepping forward. "And who have you been speaking to?" I heard voices. No one, stepmother, Zawadi lied, her hand instinctively going to the lump beneath her dress where the stone lay. Just the wind, Binta sneered, raising her hand. Do not lie to me, you wretched thing. I own you. I own this house, this land, and every breath you take. If I catch you slacking again, you will sleep with the goats for a week. She turned on her heel, her silk wraps swirling. Zawadi watched her go, her hand clutching the stone tight. For the first time in years, the fear didn't paralyze her. Instead, a question burned in her mind, ignited by the old woman's words. Why does she hate me so much? It wasn't just cruelty, it was fear. Binta was afraid. But of what? Night settled over the village of Bal, heavy and thick with the sound of crickets. The exhausted village slept, but in the kitchen hut, the embers of the fire cast long, dancing shadows against the mud walls. Zawadi lay on her mat, her body throbbing from the day's labor. Yet sleep would not come. The small, cold object the old woman had given her burned against her chest like a live coal. Checking to make sure the heavy breathing from Binta's main house was steady, Zawadi sat up. She pulled the object from her dress. In the dim orange glow of the dying fire, it looked like nothing more than a river rock caked in years of dried mud. A seed or a key, the woman had said. Zawadi spat on her thumb and began to rub the surface. The dirt was stubborn, baked on by time, but slowly it began to flake away. Underneath the gray grime, a glint of gold caught the firelight. Zawadi's breath hitched. She scrubbed harder, her heart pounding a rhythm against her ribs. As the crust fell away, the stone revealed itself to be a heavy, golden pendant, intricate and ancient. In the center sat a polished amber stone that seemed to hold a drop of the sun itself. But it was the back of the pendant that made Zawadi gasp. Etched into the soft gold was the crest of the village elders, a symbol of authority and lineage that only the matriarch of Bal was permitted to wear. And beneath the crest, a tiny engraving. To Nia, the heart of our land. Tears blurred Zawadi's vision. This wasn't just a trinket. This was the lost heirloom of her mother, the rightful matriarch. Binta had claimed for years that Nia had died penniless, selling off her rights to pay for foolish debts. Binta had claimed she took Zawadi in out of charity. The pendant was a silent scream of truth. Binta was a liar. She hadn't just stolen the land, she had stolen Zawadi's history. Suddenly, the door to the kitchen hut slammed open. Zawadi gasped, her hands closing over the pendant, but she wasn't fast enough. Binta stood there, a lantern in one hand, her face a mask of twisted rage. She had seen the flash of gold. What do you have? Binta hissed, stepping into the room. The air grew cold. I saw it. Give it to me, you little thief. It's mine, Zawadi said, her voice shaking but her grip tightening. For the first time in her life, she did not look down. She looked Binta in the eye. It belonged to my mother. Binta dropped the lantern. It didn't break, but the light swung wildly, casting chaotic shadows. She lunged at Zawadi, her long fingernails digging into the girl's wrist. Give it to me. That wretch had nothing. She died with nothing. She had this. Zawadi cried out, struggling. It has her name. It proves she was the matriarch. At those words, Binta's face drained of color. The cruelty vanished, replaced by sheer naked terror. If the village elders saw that pendant, they would know Binta had usurped the position. They would know she had hidden the true heir in servitude. The significance of material possessions is often dismissed, friends, but sometimes an object is the anchor that holds the ship of truth in the storm. You will give that to me, Binta whispered, her voice trembling now. And you will never speak of it, or I will sell you to the traders across the river before sunrise. She wrenched Zawadi's hand open. The pendant fell to the dirt floor with a heavy thud. Binta snatched it up, clutching it to her chest as if it were a viper she had to strangle. Go to sleep, Binta breathed, backing away, her eyes wide and manic. If you are not at the well by first light, you will wish you had died with your mother. She fled the hut, taking the light with her, plunging Zawadi back into darkness. But the darkness was different now. Binta had taken the pendant, yes, but she had left something far more dangerous behind, hope, and the certainty of her own guilt. Zawadi sat in the dark, nursing her scratched wrist. She didn't cry. The old woman was right. The truth had a weight, but it was a weight that made you strong, not weak. Binta was afraid. and a frightened enemy makes mistakes. Here at Tales by RM, we know that old stories and new voices often teach us that the darkest hour is just before the dawn. But dawn does not come without a fight. As Zawadi lay back down, she heard a rustling outside the thin walls. Not the wind, not a goat. It was the tap-tap-tap of a wooden staff. The seed has been planted, a voice whispered through the cracks in the mud wall. Now we must let the village water it. The next morning, the sun rose over the village of Bal, not with its usual gentle warmth, but with a fierce, blinding intensity. The air was thick, charged with the kind of electricity that precedes a summer storm. Binta, eyes red-rimmed and frantic, dragged Zawadi to the center of the village square. She dared not leave the girl alone, nor did she dare leave the pendant unguarded in the hut. She had tucked the golden heirloom deep inside her sash, wrapped in cloth, pressing against her ribs like a guilty secret. The square was teeming with life. Elders sat on their low stools discussing the harvest, while traders displayed their wares. But as Binta pushed Zawadi toward the water well, a hush fell over the crowd. It started at the edge of the market and rippled inward until the only sound was the bleating of a distant goat. Standing in the center of the square, where the great council fire was usually lit, stood the old woman. She was no longer clad in mere rags. Though her clothes were the same, she stood tall, her spine unbent by age, radiating a power that made the air shimmer. Her milky eyes, sightless to the world, seemed to look directly into the hearts of every man and woman present. The soil cannot hide the seed forever. Her voice rang out, clear and strong, cutting through the silence. And a thief cannot wear the crown of the righteous. Binta froze. She tried to turn to pull Zawadi away, but the crowd had pressed in, forming a tight circle. They were watching, their curiosity piqued by the stranger's commanding presence. "Move, you foolish woman," Binta hissed at the stranger, her bravado thin and cracking. "You block the path of honest people." The old woman tapped her staff on the ground 3 times. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoed like a heartbeat. "Honest people walk with their heads high," the old woman said, stepping closer. "But you, Binta of the highlands, walk with a heavy burden beneath your sash, a burden that burns." A murmur ran through the crowd. How did she know Binta's name? "I carry nothing but my own property," Binta shrieked, her hand flying protectively to her waist. But in doing so, she gave herself away. The old woman smiled, a fierce, terrifying expression. "Then show us. If it is yours, let it see the sun. Gold given in love warms the skin. Gold taken in hate freezes the soul." Binta began to back away, dragging Zawadi with her. "She is mad. A witch. Someone remove her." But no one moved. The villagers of Bal, who had turned a blind eye for so long, were now captivated by the unfolding drama. This is the moment, friends of Tales by RM, where the cycle of abuse meets the wall of truth. We often think evil is strong, but it is brittle. It cracks under the pressure of exposure. Suddenly, Zawadi felt a surge of courage, not from herself, but from the memory of her mother. She saw the fear in Binta's eyes, the sweat beading on her forehead. "Show them, stepmother," Zawadi cried out, her voice breaking 3 years of silence. "Show them the pendant of Nia." The name Nia acted like a spell. The elders on their stools stood up. One of them, a venerable man with a beard like white wool, stepped forward. "Nia? The matriarch's lost crest? You said it was sold to traders from the north, Binta." "It was," Binta yelled, panic rising in her voice. "The girl lies. She is sick in the head." "Then empty your sash," the elder commanded. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of law. Binta shook her head, backing up until she hit the trunk of the great baobab. She was trapped. The old woman stepped forward and simply held out her hand. She did not touch Binta. She did not use force. She simply waited. And then the strangest thing happened. Whether it was the heat, the guilt, or the loose knot of a hastily tied sash, the cloth at Binta's waist gave way. The bundle tumbled out, hitting the dusty ground. The cloth unraveled. There, gleaming in the harsh sunlight, lay the golden pendant. The amber stone in the center seemed to catch fire, glowing with an inner light. The crest of the village elders was unmistakable. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the square. The matriarch's heart, the elder whispered, falling to his knees. It was never lost. The old woman turned her sightless eyes to the crowd, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow reached every ear. You let a child carry sacks of stones while a thief wore your history. Silence is not peace, people of Baal. Silence is the accomplice of tyranny. Binta stood exposed, stripped of her lies, shrinking under the gaze of 100 eyes that finally, saw her for what she was. And they saw Zawadi, not as a servant, but as the daughter of their beloved Nia, standing tall in the dust. The truth had arrived, and it was blinding. The silence that followed the revelation was not the silence of indifference, as it had been for so many years. It was the heavy, pregnant silence of shame. The village elder, his hands trembling with a mixture of rage and reverence, bent down and retrieved the golden pendant from the dust. He wiped it clean with his thumb, the amber stone flashing like an accusation in the midday sun. He looked at Binta, not with hatred, but with a pity that cut deeper than any knife. You built a palace on a foundation of lies, Binta, the elder said, his voice gravelly and final. But the earth always remembers what is buried in it. Binta opened her mouth to speak, to weave another web of deceit, but the words died in her throat. The villagers, the neighbors, the friends she had charmed, they all turned their backs. It was a slow, deliberate movement, a wall of woven fabrics and rigid spines closing her out. In the village of Baal, to be unseen is a fate worse than death. Without a word, she turned and fled toward the river, her colorful silks trailing behind her like the broken wings of a fallen bird. She was gone, not by force but by the sheer weight of the truth. The elder turned to Zawadi. The girl who had woken up that morning as a beast of burden now stood before him, dirt-streaked and trembling. He stepped forward and gently placed the heavy gold chain around her neck. It hung low, resting against her heart, warm and grounding. Forgive us, daughter of Nia, the elder whispered, bowing his head. We let the fog blind us. We forgot that a village is a family, and when one child bleeds, we all bleed. At that moment, the tension in Zawadi's shoulders, the tension of carrying sacks, of dodging blows, of holding her breath, finally snapped. She wept, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were the rain that breaks a long drought, washing away the dust of servitude. The women of the village, the same ones who had swept their yards while she struggled, surged forward. They enveloped her in their arms, their vibrant wraps creating a cocoon of color and warmth. They offered her water, fruit, and apologies, their healing through connection beginning the slow work of mending a broken childhood. Through the gaps in the crowd, Zawadi looked for the old woman. She wanted to thank her, to ask her how she knew, to ask if she was a spirit or a saint. But the spot by the baobab tree was empty. There was only the gentle sway of the grass and the faint, lingering scent of mint and honey. The mysterious traveler had vanished as quietly as the morning mist, her work done. Years later, visitors to the village of Baal would speak of its matriarch, a young woman with eyes full of ancient wisdom and a golden amber pendant that never left her neck. They would tell stories of how she reorganized the harvest so that no child ever carried a load too heavy for their bones. They would speak of how she stopped to listen to the whispers of the wind and the complaints of the poorest servants, teaching her people that justice prevails only when we are brave enough to seek it. Zawadi did not just survive, she thrived. And she broke the cycle. Every time she saw a child stumbling, she did not look away. She became the hand that lifted the weight. And so, we close the book on this chapter from the village of Baal. It is a reminder to us all that the truth may be hidden, but it is never lost, and that kindness is the only magic we truly need to change the world. Thank you for sitting by our fire today. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of the sacks and the lightness of freedom, please subscribe to Tales by RM. We are dedicated to old stories and new voices, bringing you the wisdom of the past to light the path of the future. Until next time, may your burdens be light, and may your truth always find the sun.